Hi friends, my name is Michelle, Face of Gratitude, and my cat's on the bed. We'll see if she comes into the video, but here she is. Anyways, so I wanted to create a video and upload it on Wednesday, but I didn't end up doing that because, to be completely honest, I love sleep and I didn't get up early enough to do it. Now it is 11:39 at night and I'm doing Wednesday's video and tomorrow's video right now because tomorrow I know I'm not going to get to it because I'm saying goodbye to my dad before he goes on his trip to a different country. So it's not going to happen tomorrow. I need to do it tonight. Disregard my tired looking eyes. And anyways, I'm just going to jump right in. So I first and foremost want to say that I really hope this makes sense because this is probably the fourth video that I am trying to make. And I'm just going to say it from my perspective. So, because I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone or say that everyone is like this, but I just had the privilege, we'll say, to have plenty of time to think on my way home last weekend. Sometimes I love time to myself to just think about things. I had 2.5 hours in a car by myself driving back from a bachelorette party, and I just got to thinking that, like, about my depression and anxiety and the journey, and how it had been nearly 20 years. And I started to think to myself, why did it take, me 20 years to decide that I was going to do something about my depression and anxiety? And I had concluded that the reason was that every time I was in a bad situation, starting in middle school and my parents got a divorce, I wasn't a happy kid. Not gonna get into it, but I wasn't a happy kid, and at that age I wasn't really thinking much about any of it. I wasn't thinking that I was depressed. I wasn't thinking that I had anxiety. I didn't even understand depression or anxiety until about 8 years later, and I went to a doctor and I told her how I was feeling, and she's like, let's do a test. And I was like, okay. So I did this little like bubble test. Is that what it's called? I'm not sure. It had questions and you chose on a scale of like 1 to 5 your severity, if you were absolutely feeling that way or not feeling that way at all. And ultimately what it concluded was that I was depressed and I had anxiety. So they put me on depression and anxiety pills. I went off to college, and every time my heart started racing, I took these pills. And occasionally I would take, hi Frankie, depression medication, and I hated the way it made me feel. So I ended up taking myself off of it, except for the occasional heart pills, because every once in a while my heart would just race and I didn't understand what was going on. And I remember one moment in particular in college. I was drinking underage in a dorm room, and I don't know what triggered it, but I thought that my heart stopped. I genuinely thought my heart had stopped beating in my chest, and I looked at my sweet mate and I was like, hospital now. And I started going towards the elevator, and then I had a panic attack and I was like, wait, I've been drinking underage, stop, we can't go to the hospital. And I I started like hyperventilating, but I didn't realize that I was having a panic attack until somebody looked at me and said, Michelle, it seems like you're having a panic attack. And I was like, uh, news to me. I've never had a panic attack before. I don't know what you're talking about. And I realized that my anxiety had gotten so bad that I gave myself a panic attack. And that was when I first started realizing the intensity of my emotions, because that's another thing that I've come to realize over the years is I feel like depression and anxiety really isn't a negative thing, or it doesn't have to be a negative thing. What I personally feel it is that we are people who feel so deeply and have so much emotion that we're like overstimulated by it. We feel so strongly when something happens that we get into a deep sadness, or we feel so passionately, like for example, I want to appease others if I'm meeting new people, if I'm meeting a new crowd, that it gives me anxiety because I want to make sure that they like me, so I get anxiety about it beforehand. So I don't feel like it's a bad thing or it has to be a negative thing. I feel like it is us just overwhelmed a little bit by our emotions. Anyways, getting back to my story, I discovered in college that I had depression and anxiety, and I started to understand what that meant. Not too long after, a couple years after, I moved out of state for a relationship. And like when I say out of state, not like the next state over, like take a plane ride or drive for 2-3 days to get back home. And the relationship, we weren't meant for each other, but I got so low that I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. If I was sleeping, I wasn't sleeping well. Because I wasn't eating, and it was because I didn't have an appetite. I was losing weight. My body was going into stress mode, like it was triggering things that happen when you're stressed out, like acne or little bumps on my hands, things like that. It got really bad, to say the least, and that's the lowest that I've ever been. And I just thought, once I get through this situation, everything's gonna be fine. I never thought about how I was going to handle my anxiety or depression, what I was going to do to alleviate it, things like that. I didn't think of anxiety and depression as something that I needed a solution for. I thought of it as, when this situation ends, my depression and my anxiety are going to be gone. But what would happen is something else would come up. All of a sudden, he's moving out of the apartment and I don't know what to do. And then all of a sudden it's like my not that my job was ever really at risk, but I was bringing my emotions into my job and it was causing drama, which just created a new stress. So it was just one thing after another. And I just kept thinking, once this is over, once this is done, that's when my depression and anxiety is going to end. It wasn't until a couple years ago that I decided it wasn't when a situation ends, it's how I'm going to change my frame of mind. And that I ultimately had to create a new habit, because your mind is used to thinking a certain way, right? So my mind had its own responses and reactions to things in my life or things that happened in my life, and I had to create a new reaction, and I wanted that reaction to be something more positive. And that ultimately, when you, what's the saying? Like attracts like. So as you put out something positive or you feel something positive, you attract positive. If you continue to have a negative way of thinking, or if you continue to feel like all these bad things keep happening to me, you just continue to attract more bad things. So I had to change my way of thinking, and ultimately I feel like what my mind got thinking about on this drive home was timing, or in a way, timing. It was when I finally decided that I no longer wanted to have a life like that I was going to change my way of thinking, that I made that change for myself, and I finally took that step. But what I really wanted to share was, or one of the things that I really wanted to share was that all of our timing, and when we decide to make that decision for ourselves, it's always different. No two people are going to be the same. So some things I want to know is, do not compare yourself to your neighbor, and do not feel like you're not where you need to be. You will know, and you will feel within you a time to make that choice and to do something differently. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that my experience resonates, but I just had this thought, like, we could continue to go through it, and people can tell us one thing or another, or whatnot, but it's when we decide that we want to make that change that the change really starts happening. So I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna record the next video for Friday right after this, so I will see you again soon. Bye.